So the first book that I started this week off with was The Ever King. So basically this is an enemies to lovers romance with fae pirates. So you have land-based fae, so fae whose affinities with the land. They're at war with the sea fae, who are basically pirates. And the sea fae were banished to the depths of the ocean. And before then, though, the sea fae king's son was held captive, and the FMC was the Earth King princess, the Earth King's daughter, and she went and visited him in the cellars. She felt sorry for him and had his talisman, and they both promised each other that they would see each other again. So even though they were young, there was a bit of tension there from the get-go. But basically you fast forward 10 years into the future and they're all grown up now. She has a weird rune on her arm and she ends up bringing down the veil that separates the land fae from the sea fae, and he comes charging in because he wants vengeance for his family. And this is meant to be a dark romance. I don't think it's a dark romance compared to some of the other ones that I have read. For me, I think what constitutes a dark romance is abuse, pretty much. That seems to be what dark romance is. Do you want an abusive relationship? This is what it is. Because even though he is a killer, yes, he does kill people. And he kidnaps her, but he's nice to her. He's not really abusing her. He maybe, is a bit, wrist grabby and, talking right in her neck, that kind of thing, intimidating, I guess. But he falls for her very, very quickly and she falls for him too. There was one part that had me lolling though. So basically he's just gone down on her. And then the next scene, you've got him alluding to them having sex and she's like, I will never sleep with you. I'm like, lady, you just came in his mouth. You're beyond that now. The deed's been done, okay? It's not much difference. This has a lot of the mate bond shtick, touch her and you'll die, those kind of vibes, combining to become a power couple. Who's really the bad guy? What's really people's agendas? Who can you trust? It's a very typical romantasy kind of story. So it was fairly average, so therefore I gave it a 3 stars. So yeah, there's nothing really memorable about it. It was just a nice little sea shanty fantasy romp. The next book that I read is I Do Everything I'm Told. So this is a collection of poetry. I think the cover is really cool. It has the vibes. A lot of these poems were city-centered, so they were based on place. There was also themes of love and race, sexuality, so there was quite a breadth of topics. And the formatting was also different, so there was a variety in the way that the poems are formatted and the structure of the poems themselves. So I'll read you one of the poems, which is Palermo Sonnet. You can get a taste of the flavor. Nobody tells you how to raise a dark child. Even Cronus sent his son underwater, because all origins are first strung in myth and bottomless disappointment. In a street blackout, we light candles while teenage boys break into our house just so we know they can enter whenever they want. Nothing is stolen. You pour orange rosa and ask what I think of your hometown. It feels like a proposal. That night, sailing in a windstorm with Icarus to our left, you show no fear. You scare men and gods and joke all women pay for the sins of fathers, even if they aren't our fathers or sins. You insist bad weather is a gift. Rain gathers in. So overall, I felt like the poems were good, but this wasn't life-changing for me, and that's the way it is with poetry. There's poetry I don't care about at all, poetry that is nice, pleasant, enjoyable, but doesn't really leave its mark, and then the poetry that you feel is running through your veins and pulsing in your heart. So that was that book. I am currently reading, let me just see what it's called, Eternal Reign, Age of Vampires. I am 38% of the way through this book. I don't believe this is set in modern times. I think it's older. So in this book, you've got a bunch of humans who pretty much are kept like cattle. Vampires came, raised the lands, subjugated all of the humans, and now use them as blood bags pretty much, and all the humans live in poverty. You've got a father and his 2 very feisty, strong-willed daughters, and they decide to rise up against the vampires. There's a vampire slayer in play, kind of who's just awoken from slumber. So it's got a weird vibe. I don't know yet how I would classify it. I need to read a little bit more. If for some reason it has a Walking Dead vibe to me. It has a Buffy the Vampire Slayer vibe. It has the originals TV series vibe. So it is heavy on the cussing. There is so much swearing in this, and it becomes a bit cringe. It's a bit excessive, and it makes the writing overall feel very, not just colloquial, but basic in a way. So I don't know how I feel about it yet. I might go to the 50% mark. and see how we go, but it's very easy to read. It's fast paced. Okay, so my plan today is that I am going out to see Poor Things with my bestie Kate at Lido Cinemas, which is an art house cinema in Hawthorne. So I know this is based on a book. I haven't read the book, so I'm going in blind. I will let you know what I think of it when I return. The bags under my eyes are very prominent today. The sleep deprivation continues. Unfortunately, it turns out I've got holes in my roof that I need to get fixed before I get the possums removed, because otherwise the possums are just going to go straight back in. So I've got to get my dad to finish fixing the holes, and then I can get the possums taken away somewhere close by, but not in my roof, and then hopefully I will sleep. I have also decided that I will not be continuing the Melbourne Diaries segment that I was doing. It just takes up too much of my time, and I just don't have that amount of time to spend on extra stuff. So what I'm thinking of doing is next month going forward, I'm going to split my monthly wrap up into 2 halves. So we'll have half with the deck and the crochet portion, and the other half with everything else, plus these little bits and pieces, kind of like just putting morsels of the Melbourne Diaries into that. I think that's just the best way for me to work it right now. But I'll touch base with you guys when I get back from the movie. I don't. I am back. I enjoyed the film. I really liked it. I am absolutely going to read the novel. I want to see how it differs and if it has any explanations for some things in the film that didn't make sense to me regarding empathy and a choice at the end that happened between, I can't talk about it because it will spoil it, but something at the end happened. I'm like, why though? Why wouldn't you do this? This would make more sense. But the movie itself had a very gothic steampunk feel to it. The use of costume design and sounds, because it's not just music, like the use of sound and color and the way shots are framed and the lenses that are used, everything was done very intentionally and it elicited like specific responses. The film to me is like almost set in 3 parts, where the first part, it's in black and white. It's everything about it makes you uncomfortable and makes you feel trapped. And then you've got the middle part, which is this feeling of freedom and joy and curiosity and wonder and exploration. And then the third of taking the rose-colored glasses off, seeing reality and no longer being on up with your head in the clouds, but feet are on the earth, and the ramifications of that and how to live in the world once you're aware of it and understand it. So yeah, I think it's fantastic. I love it. It's weird. It's confronting. Okay, there's body horror, there's animal abuse in there, there's full nudity and graphic sex scenes. So it's got a lot of stuff happening in it. I'd say check trigger warnings for it, but I enjoyed it. I'm glad overall it was well done and would recommend. So I will read that book. I will see if my library has it so I can read it, hopefully for this vlog, but we'll see if we can get there. But yeah, movie, good times. Excuse the wet hair, just couldn't be bothered waiting for it to dry. So the other books that I read for this vlog, I read 5 Ingredient Mediterranean by Jamie Oliver. It's okay, but for some reason I was not inclined to make any of the recipes in this book. It just wasn't appealing, and the title is a misnomer because it didn't include the dressings. So the 5 ingredients didn't include things like olive oil, vinegars, lemon juice, things of that nature. I didn't find any of the recipes appetizing, so I won't be trying any of them. She's upset because I'm standing up instead of sitting down. The next book I read was Manacled, and she's so cute. Say hello. Because as you know, I was going on a bit of a dive into dark romances, and I'm surfacing. I am staying out of those depths From now on, I've pretty much realized that I prefer my romance without rape and abuse at the hands of the romantic lead. Call me old-fashioned, but that's the way I feel about it. So Manacled is a Hermione and Draco fanfic that everyone is losing their minds over. It's like a 1,000-page book. But guys, look, do I like dark themes? Sometimes, yes. Do I want to read about Draco raping Hermione like straight into the book? No, I don't. I'm not going to ship them together. My God, like, it's not like he went in reluctantly. Like, it was sickening, you know? It's like, ugh. I don't want to read about a woman falling in love with her rapist. It's just not my cup of tea. So, you know, not yucking anyone else's yum. So many people like this. They really love it. But for me, it was just... I don't need all of my hopes and dreams crushed under a heel and pulverized into dust that way. The dark romances that I've read that were true dark romances, they all have the same thing where the love interest is abusive and the main characters are normally always raped, and sometimes also they have taboo things like statutory rape, pedophilia, extreme sadism to the point the person's almost dead from the beatings. So yeah, no for me. Thank you. I've had my fair share of abuse in real life, and I don't want to read about it in my make-believe world, you know? So in regards to romance, if a book is meant to be a romance book, let me have a beautiful depiction. I don't mind if characters are flawed, if they have their own trauma and baggage and emotional issues, that's fine. But I don't want to read about a love interest abusing the person they supposedly love in like really graphic ways. So I'm out of that genre. The next book I read was Poor Things. Okay, so the movie, loved it, loved the movie, fantastic. So wanted to read the book. Oh, okay, I loathed it. I have given it 1.5 stars, and that is based upon the generosity of the movie. If I had gone into this without having the basic foundation of knowledge from the movie, I would not have known what the fuck was going on in this book. So the movie helped me understand what was actually happening, whereas if I had just read this without any previous information, I would have been thoroughly perplexed. Basically though, I would have DNF'd it very quickly. The writing style was just not for me. It is very obtuse and convoluted and hard to understand. Whoever did the screenplay for Poor Things based on this book deserves a bloody Oscar. How they managed to pull out a cohesive narrative and linear plot line and well-formed characters is beyond me. Because the book, like what? The more problematic elements too, also that were in the book, the movie did sort of iron them out a little bit, so you didn't have as much of like the pedophilia angle as the book does. Basically the premise of this book, it's a reinvention of Frankenstein, and what you've got is a woman who's killed herself. She was pregnant at the time, and this doctor, God is his nickname, cuts the baby out, takes the baby's brain. The baby was alive, so could have lived a normal life. But he's like, now, why do that when I can put the baby's brain inside this grown woman's body and basically have a wife? In the movie though, it's not that way. He's more of a paternal figure, and he was just doing it for science. Like, this would be an interesting experiment, and he is very paternal over Bella, whereas in the book, no. Yeah, that's the premise of the book, and you've got this woman with a baby brain who is maturing very rapidly and is learning about the world, and sexuality is a big main theme in this book. Look, it is interspersed with some decent quotes on feminism and socialism, so that's probably the highlight of the book per se. I'll read one of the quotes about the medical profession, for instance. If medical practitioners wanted to save lives instead of making money out of them, they would unite to prevent diseases, not work separately to cure them. The cause of most illness has been known since the 6th century before Christ, when the Greeks made a goddess of hygiene. Sunlight, cleanliness and exercise McCandle. Fresh air, pure water, a good diet and clean, roomy houses for everyone, and a total government ban on all work which poisons and prevents these things. So look, God did come up with some great quotes, but that was the only thing I enjoyed out of this. It's just the book itself is done as a book within a book with dueling and conflicting and unreliable narrators. So you've got Bella's husband providing one version, and then you've got Bella herself providing her version, and then you've got the dude that found the original journal and is talking to Bella's version of things. So it just felt very messy and mucky and wasn't a pleasure to read. Let's just say that. I had to push myself through it, and I did so, like I said, with the knowledge of the movie guiding me along. Otherwise I would have been a lost bitch. So my recommendation would be skip the book and just watch the film. Film is far stellar in my opinion. There's still some things I didn't understand in terms of the ending. I don't want to talk about it. I want to say what I would prefer the ending to be, but I'm not going to spoil anybody. So, and it's a better ending than the book's ending as well, even though it was flawed, still better than what the book did. So that was Poor Things, which was a yuck and a no. It's just not my kind of fiction. I know some people love it, but I'm like, no, thank you. And so I normally read about 20% nonfiction, and I realized I have not thus far read any nonfiction. So I remedied that with one of the books that was actually on my most anticipated reads. This is Eventually Everything Connects, 8 Essays on Uncertainty by Sarah Firth. So on the back, it says, this book is a delicious mix of daily life, science, philosophy, and irreverent humor. And so I was expecting more, I guess, philosophical ideas and facts from a, I don't want to say qualified source, but from an expert. It's not. So I will show you quickly some pictures. Warning nudity. I've given this a 3.5 stars. So this is basically the daily musings of an elder millennial bisexual white woman. It's kind of raunchy, kind of wacky. There is a lot of genitalia and insects in this. Those are the two main illustrations, I would guess. So it is quite graphic in the depictions of some sex scenes. It's all illustrated, but be forewarned if that's not your thing. But yeah, it's just the thoughts that this lady ponders. There's a lot of mentions of the Matrix also in here. It was mildly entertaining, 3.5 stars. I like the illustration style, but it wasn't the non-fiction book that I was thinking it was going to be. It's more of a creative non-fiction, if that makes sense, like a fictional non-fiction. But it was interesting, very interesting. And that's everything for this vlog. Until next time, stay well, child.